The new Forbidden Unlimited list was just announced, and Konami clearly has their sights on one character. After taking up 80% of the Goha Rush Festival's top 100, and nearly 50% of that being Dragonic Resonance alone, some hits are justified. But I don't think that Konami is able to stop the king of duels, and the strongest duelist in Goha number 7, Elementary. The big target is Dragonic Resonance. Amongst discussion I've seen about whether to reduce the level gain or allow just one monster to be buffed, I don't think anyone was expecting this. 3 new dragons have gone onto the limited 3 list. Piercing Dragon's Bunker Strike is a pivotal tool for cleaning up awkward hands, while Sports Dragon Pitcher is the deck's primary method of getting to double boss boards. Either one of these hits would be a blow to the deck, but both combined is a massive nerf. Luckily, Dragonic Resonance was in such a high spot prior to this ban list that I think it's going to make the deck fair, rather than bad. It's also important to note that if these were the only 2 cards on the limited 3 list, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, Dragius and Phoenix Dragon are already there, and these are joining them, causing 12 cards you want to run to be forced down to just 3. Currently, players are running a split of 1 Dragius and 2 Phoenix, due to the importance of recycling Dragonic Slayer later in the game. We'll cover the changes I'll make in a minute, but first, let's go to the final dragon that was hit on the list, Clear Ice Dragon. Once again, the main issue is the conflict with Phoenix Dragon. Ancient Forces currently rely on Clear Ice Dragon to put Phoenix Dragon on the bottom of the deck before shuffling the deck, with Ancient Arise Dragon or the skill to get those Phoenix Dragons back into rotation and use the effect 3, 4, or even 5 times over the course of a single game. Now, the play is going to be much less available. Of course, the deck is not hit nearly as hard, and we'll be going over changes I will make to compensate for both of these strategies in a moment. But before we do, we must cover the final card on the list, Seahorse Carrier. While it is true that Ancient Forces decks were utilizing this card, it is likely intended to be a more general hit, as everyone from Yami Ruler to Lightning Bolt Condor was making use of this pink horse. Carrier stands out above the competition as being the only card capable of using its effect while other monsters are on the field. This will allow players to use multiple copies in one turn for massive tempo swings. With the hit to 2, the card is still perfectly playable, though we will have to see if the player base opts to switch towards the Beast Engine in the coming weeks. With that, let's head into the deck editor and see if we can keep our dragons alive. This is what my Dragonic Resonance deck currently looks like before the changes. As you can see, 3 copies of Bunker Strike and 3 copies of Sports Dragon Pitcher. This is not going to be allowed any longer. So, where do we start? Personally, I believe Sports Dragon Pitcher is the most important part of all of these Limit 3 cards. This is because it is the only way we actually generate advantage in the deck outside of Triad Drago. If we want a double boss board, or even a solid board backed by trap cards, we need to be resolving Sports Dragon Pitcher or Triad Drago. Because of this, I think we do need to run 2 copies of Sports Dragon Pitcher. And for the final slot, I think Phoenix Dragon is the most important. This is because recycling your boss monsters later in the game will give you access to another copy of Dragonic Slayer to destroy the opponent's trap cards. This unfortunately means Bunker Strike has to go completely, as does Dragius and 1 copy of Phoenix Dragon. So, what do we put in to replace these? We can't just not run boss monsters, so the first thing to do is put in some copies of Gravity Press Dragon. This is another high-level monster that is able to trigger the Dragonic Resonance skill. However, it only has 1500 attack, so it's not that great. Additionally, we can put in Ancient Arise Dragon. Notably, this card, even without Burning Blaze Dragon or Clear Ice Dragon, is still a 3000 attack point monster, which is great for dealing with the opponent's monsters, even through traps like the Barrier. Speaking of the Barrier, I'm going to take out Phantom Bind and put in the Barrier as our trap card of choice. This is less about the combat utility and more about its ability to put my monsters back into the deck. When we only have a limited selection of boss monsters, we want to make sure we are able to draw high-level monsters turn after turn. And that means running the Barrier to put those monsters back into the deck. Finally, I do think we need Monster Reincarnation to substitute for the second Phoenix Dragon. So, what do we take out? Probably the 3rd Gravity Press Dragon, just because it is such a low attack stat going into the opponent's turn. With this, we do still have 5 big boss monsters. We have Recursion between Phoenix Dragon and the Barrier. We have plenty of skill triggers with Gravity Press and Triad. And then we have all of the other cards you're used to seeing. Twin-Edged Dragon can still swing for 3,000 damage, the Sports Dragons are mostly intact, and our high-level vanilla monsters are still here. This deck is definitely significantly weaker, but I think it is still playable. And next up, we have Ancient Forces. This is the deck I used to come in 50th place in the Goha Rush Festival. So, where do we start? Just like before, I believe Dragius needs to go. Luckily, it's easy to replace it with the third copy of Ancient Arise Dragon. Then, we look at Clear Ice Dragon, and one copy is definitely going out for the third copy of Burning Blaze Dragon. However, this still leaves us with 4 slots, 2 Phoenix Dragon and 2 Clear Ice. Which one do we get rid of? You could make the case that Clear Ice Dragon is easy enough to cut because we can recycle it with Ancient Arise Dragon. However, I am going to lean towards the Phoenix Dragon here. This is because we actually need to draw our level 6 monsters in order to use the skill and enable the recycling. One thing I will say though is that if we get more field spells in the future, Burning Blaze Dragon is also going to become a way to cycle Phoenix Dragon, so it may not be as bad. Currently, the deck can use Clear Ice Dragon to put Phoenix Dragons back and then basically get access to a ton of Ancient Arise Dragons over the course of the game. With Clear Ice Dragon now at 3, we're basically hoping to see field spells that we can destroy so we can continue this deck's game plan. Now, what do we replace? We could opt for the barrier, just like we did with Dragonic Resonance, but it is significantly weaker in this deck. A monster like Clear Ice Dragon is never surviving combat thanks to the barrier, whereas something like Dragonic Slayer definitely can. Say a Dragius swings into it, it gets reduced to 2100 and destroyed. But these 1600 and 1800 attack point monsters are not safe. Oh, and we can't forget Seahorse Carrier is now at 2, so we have to remove one of those. Personally, I think we keep it simple. Let's go ahead and put in the third copy of Dragorite alongside 1 Speedy Performer. Dragorite is of course a generic 1500 beat stick, which will help in establishing decent boards. And finally, Speedy Performer is still a viable tech option in this deck. We have more or less the exact same number of high-level monsters. I think we lose out on 1. And then Speedy Performer basically works so that we can boost our monster before tributing it off for Clear Ice Dragon or Burning Blaze Dragon. And it even works better now that we're running extra 1500s. A lot of the time, Speedy Performer requires a really perfect hand to boost a tribute monster and then get tributed off for a second tribute monster. But if we have monsters with decent attack in the level 4 and lower slot, Speedy Performer can boost those before getting tributed off. One other change that you could consider is replacing these Phantom Binds not with the barrier, but with Music Princess's Recital. This is a much better trap card for the deck, especially considering how many decks are not weak to Phantom Bind. Previously, I wasn't using it due to the Stranglehold that Dragonic Resonance had on the meta. They're able to boost their monsters above level 8 and completely negate this trap. However, with Dragonic Resonance now being weaker, Music Princess's Recital is a much stronger card, and it can protect those weak 1600 attack or 1800 attack monsters when the barrier or Phantom Bind cannot. Overall, I'd say this deck is still pretty powerful. It doesn't even look like I've changed too many cards. I'm excited to see how it shakes up into the next format. Thank you for watching.